Rimuru Go Back in Time by Rimu-chi. Spech before battle. Greetings, my esteemed fellow demon lords. He began, his voice carrying a mix of arrogance and affected politeness. I am honored to have you all here today, answering my summons. This Walpergus meeting was called for an urgent matter that concerns us all, a matter that threatens the sanctity of our title as demon lords. Clayman paused for effect, his gaze sweeping the room to gauge the reactions of his peers. His eyes briefly lingered on Rimuru, a subtle smirk tugging at the corner of his lips. He didn't name names, but the target of his speech was clear to anyone paying attention. Recent events have disrupted the delicate balance we, as demon lords, have long maintained. Actions have been taken that I believe warrant our unified response. But fear not, I have already taken steps to ensure that this meeting will resolve any and all uncertainties. As he spoke, his confidence seemed to swell, his smirk widening. He glanced toward Milam, seated beside him in feigned subservience, her expression carefully blank. Clayman felt untouchable, bolstered by the belief that with Milam Nava, the destroyer, under his command, no one in the room could challenge him. Yes, Clayman thought to himself, even these so-called demon lords have remained silent. They know Milam's power, and now, with my own awakening as a true demon lord, I am unstoppable. Rimuru Tempest will be judged, and none can defy me. Clayman returned his focus to the room, his voice rising theatrically. And so, let us begin the meeting of the demon lords, the Walpergus. Previously. Third person POV. The room was heavy with tension, each demon lord seated in their place, radiating an intimidating aura. Power seemed to pulse in the air, thick and oppressive. All eyes were on the center of the table, where the meeting was about to begin. Rimuru sat calmly, appearing relaxed, but his mind was sharp and focused. Behind his blindfold, he carefully watched the room, his thoughts calculating every possible move. This wasn't just another Walpergus for him, it was a chance to rewrite events, to steer the future onto a different path. This time, he was determined to change things for the better. Beside Rimuru sat Irina, his younger sister, her presence both comforting and protective. She glanced around the room, clearly unimpressed by the display of power from the other demon lords. Rain, now one of Rimuru's subordinates and fiancés, stood behind him, her gaze cold and unwavering as she silently assessed the situation. Frey, another of Rimuru's fiancés, sat quietly in her seat. Her true relationship with Rimuru was unknown to the others, but her subtle glances in his direction spoke volumes. Rimuru, aware of everything, kept his expression neutral, focused on the task ahead. At the center of it all was Clayman. He stood proudly, acting as though he held all the power. In the room. He was still under the delusion that Milam, who sat silently at his side, acting like she wasn't under his control. Clayman believed this moment was his to shine, his voice loud and confident as he prepared to speak. The tension in the room grew as the meeting began, each demon lord watching and waiting. Rimuru leaned back slightly, a faint smile playing on his lips. He wasn't here to watch Clayman's show, he was here to make his move. Rimuru's POV. I leaned back in my seat, relaxed but fully aware of my surroundings. To my left, Irina sat on the edge of my chair, her sharp eyes scanning the room with curiosity. She didn't seem the least bit intimidated by the powerful beings gathered here. Rain, ever professional, stood behind me. Every now and then, she exchanged glances with Misery, her expression smug, as if to say, see. My master is stronger and cooler than yours. Ramirez, trying her best to act like a dignified demon lord, was failing miserably due to her childlike demeanor. Beretta and Trainee stood silently behind her, exuding the proper air of loyal subordinates. Dino, true to form, had already drifted off to sleep in his chair, his posture lazy and unbothered. Leon, meanwhile, kept his gaze fixed on Clayman, occasionally glancing at me with a thoughtful expression. Frey, seated nearby, was focused entirely on Milam, her concern for her fellow demon lord clear. Milam, of course, was putting on her act, pretending to be under Clayman's control while keeping up her usual composed demeanor. Roy Valentine, the stand-in for Luminous, listened to Clayman's speech with polite disinterest. The real demon lord Valentine, however, wasn't paying attention at all. Instead, her focus was squarely on Mia's wall, a faint blush on her face as she stole glances at him. Guy Crimson sat back, entirely unbothered, showing no interest in Clayman's theatrics. Dagrol mirrored his attitude, his massive frame resting against the table as if none of this concerned him. Suddenly, Informer's voice echoed in my mind. Master, You look bored, she said, her tone curious. I smirked slightly. It's because I know exactly what's going to happen. Clayman's speech is so predictable, it's almost painful. Should I do something to liven it up? Informer offered. I chuckled softly in my mind. No, let him have his moment. It's only fair he gets a taste of glory before his downfall. Satisfied with my answer, Informer went quiet, and Rimuru ended the telepathic conversation. Guy Crimson stood, his crimson hair and commanding presence drawing the attention of everyone in the room. With a sharp look around, he declared, let's begin the Demon Lord's banquet. Walpergus officially starts now. He then turned slightly toward Misery and said, Misery, take care of the introductions. Misery gave a small bow and stepped forward. Her posture was formal, her tone steady and respectful as she began the introductions. We will now introduce the participants of this Walpergus. She gestured to the first seat. First seat. Demon Lord Guy Crimson, Lord of Darkness Demon. The room remained quiet as her voice continued. Second seat. Milam Nava, the Destroyer Dragonoid. Milam sat silently, her act as Clayman's puppet flawless. Third seat. Ramirez, Fairy of the Labyrinth. Ramirez sat upright, clearly trying her best to look like a proper demon lord, though her childlike demeanor made it difficult for others to take her seriously. Fourth seat. Dino, the Sleeping Ruler Fallen. Dino, as expected, was leaning back in his chair, half asleep, barely bothering to act interested. Fifth seat. Dagrul, the Earthquake Giant. Dagrul gave a small nod, his sheer size exuding a quiet, overwhelming power. Sixth seat. Roy, Demon Lord of the Night Vampire. Roy sat with elegance, though the true vampire demon lord, Luminous Valentine, watched silently, unnoticed by most. Seventh seat. Leon Cromwell, Platinum Devil Demonoid. Leon's sharp gaze occasionally darted toward Rimuru, but his expression remained unreadable. Eighth seat. Carrion, Beast King absent. Misery paused briefly before moving on, as no explanation was necessary. Ninth seat. Frey, Queen of the Sky Harpy. Frey's graceful demeanor was intact, though her eyes occasionally flicked to Milam, full of concern. 10th seat. Clayman, Marionette Master Deadman. Clayman straightened up, clearly enjoying his moment of attention, oblivious to the faint disdain some demon lords had for him. With the primary introductions done, Misery turned to Rain. Now, for the guests. Rain stepped forward with confidence, her voice firm and clear as she spoke. Our guest. Rimuru Tempest, founder and king of the kingdom of Jura Tempest. A murmur ran through the room at the mention of Rimuru's name. Rain added, with a softer tone, and accompanying him, his younger sister, Irina Tempest. Irina, seated casually on Rimuru's left, gave a small wave, earning a few curious glances from the gathered demon lords. Misery stepped forward again to conclude. With the introductions complete, I hereby declare this Walpergus Demon Lords banquet officially open. The air in the room grew heavy with anticipation. Rimuru leaned back slightly in his chair, observing the subtle dynamics and hidden intentions among the demon lords. The game was begin. As Misery finished her speech, Clayman rose from his seat, his expression filled with disdain. He pointed directly at Rimuru, who sat calmly among the council, and began his tirade. Rimuru Tempest over there, Clayman said loudly, ensuring all eyes turned toward him, is an unnecessary character not just for this council, but for the entire world. His very presence is an insult to our kind. He dares to call himself a demon lord. He makes a mockery of what we stand for, portraying us as weak, pathetic beings. And worse, he shows blatant disrespect for the name and legacy of demon lords. Clayman's voice echoed across the room. A few demon lords glanced briefly at Rimuru, their auras brushing against his. Dino remained asleep, oblivious to the growing tension. Milam, sitting nearby, played along with her act, feigning indifference. Frey, Guy, Ramirez, and Carrion hiding his identity remained silent, observing. Luminous didn't bother to look up, uninterested in the accusations. The remaining demon lords who did observe Rimuru analyzed him carefully. Yet, to their surprise, they sensed only the aura of a low-level demon lord seed. Dismissing him as insignificant, they shifted their attention back to Clayman, allowing him to continue his speech. While Clayman ranted, Rimuru sat unbothered. Internally, he engaged in a conversation with Informer, his most trusted skill. How do I look right now? Rimuru asked casually, an amused smirk on his face. Your appearance is flawless, Master, Informer replied instantly. Satisfied, Rimuru chuckled. Good. By the way, I have a request. I want you to create a new skill for me. What kind of skill, Master? Informer asked, intrigued. I want a battle mode. Something like Milam's. It looks cool, don't you think? Rimuru said enthusiastically. After a pause, Informer responded, you don't actually need such a thing, Master. Your current abilities are already far superior. But I want it, Rimuru insisted, his tone lighthearted. It'll be fun to have one. Request accepted, Informer said after a brief silence. Creating Void Dragon Scale Armor, successful. Creating Battle Form, successful. Thanks, Informer, Rimuru said, satisfied. You are welcome, Master, Informer replied before disconnecting. In the real world, only 2 seconds had passed, and Rimuru remained composed, a slight smile playing on his lips. Next to him, Irina quietly hummed a tune, entirely unbothered by the tension in the room. Rimuru sat back, continue watching Clayman, the one who dig his own grave. Clayman wasn't finished. His voice grew louder as he continued, turning to the other demon lords with dramatic flair. Rimuru, Tempest and Carrion plotted to awaken themselves as true demon lords by sacrificing the innocent people of Falmouth. Yes, my fellow demon lords, this was their vile plan. Carrion aided Rimuru, betraying our code and the principles we stand for. He let his words linger before adding, but when the truth came to light, Milam, in her righteous anger, declared war on Carrion. She acted to protect the balance we uphold. And though I know the rules strictly forbid demon lords from fighting one another, I argue that Milam's actions should not be punished. After all, her actions were justifiable. The room remained mostly quiet. Those paying attention listened with skepticism or disinterest. Others, like Dino, remained asleep, and Milam kept her expression blank, maintaining her act. Meanwhile, Rimuru appeared as though he were on the verge of collapsing from any real affliction, but sheer boredom. With his hands resting under his chin, he yawned quietly. Thanks to the blindfold over his eyes, no one could discern whether he had actually fallen asleep. This is beyond boring, Rimuru thought to himself. Hearing the same nonsense for the second time is unbearable. Despite his internal frustration, he chose to remain silent. There was no point in interrupting yet. Letting Clayman bask in his delusions of grandeur seemed like the better option for now. In the back of his mind, Rimuru couldn't help but laugh at how Clayman continued to dig a deeper hole for himself. Clayman's tone grew even sharper, his finger extending dramatically toward Rimuru. This person, he exclaimed. Rimuru, catching the pointed gesture, raised his hand slightly, offering a small, casual wave. Hi, he said, his voice light and playful. The reaction was immediate. Guy Crimson's usually stoic face twitched with amusement, and Lumino, shitting her identity as a maid, almost burst into laughter. Carrion, maintaining his disguise, smirked, while Frey allowed herself a soft, subtle smile. Even Dino, who had been dozing off, cracked an eye open, watching Rimuru with mild curiosity. This guy is actually pretty chill, Dino thought to himself. Not like that fiery redhead. Unaware for ignoring the shift in the room's mood, Clayman pressed on. This so-called demon lord uses the name of the storm dragon, Veldora, to pretend he wields some grand, unbeatable power. But let's be real, there's no Veldora behind him. It's all a bluff. Rimuru Tempest is nothing more than an imposter. He lacks strength, pride, and dignity. Everything about him is fake. As Clayman was about to continue, Dagrul raised his hand, silencing the room. His deep voice rumbled as he posed his question. What if Veldora is with him? What if Rimuru is telling the truth and simply chose to stay silent about it? What happens then? The weight of the question hung in the air, drawing the attention of several demon lords. Clayman, clearly caught off guard, sputtered before regaining his composure. Ridiculous! He exclaimed, his voice defensive and shrill. Do you honestly believe that the great storm dragon, Veldora, would align himself with this Magin? It's nothing more than a fabricated story to deceive us all. Even if such an alliance existed, unlikely as it is, Rimuru would have used it already to assert his power. Instead, he hides behind silence because he has nothing to show. It's a desperate attempt to appear stronger than he is. Clayman gestured dramatically, trying to emphasize his point. If Veldora were truly with him, where is the proof? Why has no one seen him? This is all just another one of Rimuru's lies. As Clayman ranted on, Rimuru suddenly slammed his head onto the table, creating a loud, resounding thud that reverberated throughout the hall. All the demon lords turned to look at him, including the still sleeping Dino, who blinked awake at the noise. The room fell silent as every eye fixed on Rimuru, waiting for his response. Rimuru, unfazed by the attention, casually turned to Arena and spoke in a relaxed tone. Wake me up after Clayman finishes his speech, Oki, Rimuru said with a slight smile. Arena nodded obediently, though her expression showed a hint of curiosity. Is it all right to let him continue, big brother? Absolutely, Rimuru replied with confidence, clearly uninterested in Clayman's dramatic tirade. Dino, now fully awake, observed Rimuru and thought to himself, this Rimuru guy, he's so calm, so unbothered. I like that. Dino felt a strange connection to Rimuru, sensing a similar laid-back attitude, and decided that they could become good friends. Meanwhile, Clayman, having noticed the disruption, sneered at Rimuru. What's this? Disrespect. He muttered under his breath, but it was loud enough for the demon lords to hear. His voice, dripping with indignation, grew louder as he continued his speech. You all saw that, didn't you? Clayman shouted, his eyes blazing with false fury. Rimuru Tempest has no regard for the demon lords. To fall asleep or show such disdain while I speak of his crimes. This is an insult. A total disrespect to all of us here. He paused, glaring at Rimuru as if expecting a response. The other demon lords exchanged glances, but none dared to speak. They had seen Rimuru's unbothered attitude before and weren't fazed by his behavior. Many of them had their own reasons for remaining silent, some out of respect for the greater schemes at play, others simply too tired to entertain Clayman's theatrics. Clayman, misinterpreting the silence as agreement with his outrage, pressed on. His voice rose again in dramatic intensity. I will not stand by while someone like Rimuru sullies our ranks, tarnishing the very name of the demon lords. His actions are an affront to all of us. He slammed his hand down on the table once more. We must eliminate him, this joke of a demon lord, before he ruins everything we've worked for. Rimuru, still lounging in his seat, couldn't help but stifle a small yawn. This is getting boring, he thought. Clayman, emboldened by the silence around him, pressed on with his accusations. And his crimes don't stop there. He jabbed a finger into the air for emphasis. This Rimuru Tempest, alongside Carrion, slaughtered innocent people of Falmouth in a twisted attempt to awaken his demon lords. They failed miserably. Then, they spun a false story, claiming the Falmouth army attacked Tempest while Rimuru was conveniently away, just to justify their heinous actions. He paused dramatically, scanning the room for any sign of reaction. Most of the demon lords remained silent, but Clayman took this as validation, continuing his story with more passion. But that's not all. He shouted, now growing more impassioned. I sent my most loyal and trusted subordinate to deliver a message to this so-called demon lord, a warning to stop interfering with the balance we demon lords maintain. And what did he do? Clayman's voice cracked as he dabbed his eyes with a handkerchief, feigning sorrow. He killed her. My dear Mayoran, one of my finest and most loyal subordinates, murdered by Rimuru Tempest. She delivered a message, and this monster ended her life without remorse. He sniffled and allowed fake tears to flow, scanning the room for any hint of sympathy. The other demon lords, however, remained silent, their expressions unreadable. Clayman, mistaking the quiet for agreement, thought to himself, this is perfect. They're falling for my words. Soon, they'll turn against Rimuru, and my plans will succeed. Rimuru, still unfazed by Clayman's increasingly dramatic speech, continued to lounge in his chair, a slight smirk curling at his lips. He didn't feel the need to react to Clayman's accusations or emotional performance. This is worse than I remember. Fake tears. Pathetic, Rimuru thought to himself, utterly uninterested. Clayman's voice now boomed with a false sense of authority as he relentlessly continued his attack. Rimuru Tempest is an unwanted presence among us demon lords. He is a disgrace to our title and has shown nothing but disrespect to all of us here. His hands were clenched into fists, and his voice trembled with what he hoped was righteous indignation. This so-called Rimuru Tempest is a danger to the very name of the demon lords. An absolute joke. No strength. No pride. Clayman's theatrics reached a peak as he slammed his hand on the table again, leaning forward to give his next words extra emphasis. I propose we eliminate this person once and for all. We don't need someone like this sullying our ranks. His eyes scanned the room, looking for any sign of agreement. His voice boomed even louder, filled with self-righteous fury. We must finish him off. If we don't, the name of demon lords will become a laughingstock to the entire world. Clayman raised both hands, shouting, who's with me? The impact of his hands on the table sent a resounding crash through the room, and the atmosphere grew tense. The room fell into complete silence, the other demon lords seemingly frozen. Rimuru, however, simply relaxed, letting the quiet wash over him. Finally, a moment of silence. That rant was exhausting even to listen to, he mused internally, his smirk growing. Clayman, misinterpreting the silence as the weight of his words taking effect, leaned back in his chair, now speaking in a quieter, smug tone. Thanks for listening to me, he said, his eyes scanning the room, looking for any hint of approval or support. But in his mind, he was already victorious. I've done it. There's no way Rimuru can recover from this. He has no defense, no allies. His doom is inevitable now. Clayman believed his accusations had left Rimuru without a way to counter his words, convinced that his moment had come. The other demon lords remained silent, watching, but not one seemed to react. Misery stepped forward, her presence commanding attention as she announced, "It's time for our guest to speak for himself." Her voice echoed through the room, cutting through the tension. Rimuru, still half asleep, was resting in his seat. Irina, noticing, gently nudged him awake. "Big brother, it's your turn," she said softly, her voice laced with a hint of concern. Rimuru blinked a few times, shaking off the drowsiness. He looked at Irina, gave her a reassuring smile, and petted her head. "Thanks, Irina," he murmured, before standing up with ease, his usual composure returning. He turned his attention to Clayman, who was standing confidently, awaiting a reaction. "Your name is Clayman, right?" Rimuru began, his voice nonchalant, almost bored. "Well, whatever, I don't really care about your name." Rimuru then glanced at the other demon lords present, their eyes fixed on him, waiting for his words. With a small, almost mocking smile, he continued, "Clayman said a lot of things about me, about what I do. Honestly, I have to give him some credit. He'll give him 10 points for his imagination." A few of the demon lords exchanged looks, not sure whether to laugh or be serious. Clayman, however, was visibly enraged. His voice rose as he retorted, "How dare you make a joke out of me?" Rimuru waved his hand dismissively. "Oh, I'm not done yet, Clayman," he said with a grin. "Let me continue." He straightened his posture and spoke with calm confidence. "First of all, yes, I haven't awakened as a true demon lord. But honestly, I don't need to be one. Yes, I have a demon lord seed, but it's from Orc Lord, the one whose little scam you tried to pull off. That was me, by the way. Ruined your plans, didn't I?" The other demon lords, who had previously been focused on Clayman's speech, now turned their attention to Rimuru. The tension in the room shifted, they were listening, intrigued. Rimuru continued, undeterred by Clayman's angry outburst. "You said that Carrion and I were plotting something together. You're delusional, Clayman. Carrion is the type of person who would never do something like that." Clayman's face turned red with anger. "Words aren't enough, Rimuru. You have no proof," he snarled. Before Clayman could say more, Dagrul interrupted, his deep voice booming through the room. "And what about this, Rimuru?" Dagrul asked, pointing at Clayman. "According to him, you're just pretending that Veldora is under your control. What do you say about that?" Rimuru nodded calmly, his gaze unwavering. "Yes, Veldora is with me. But he's not under my control, he's my brother. He's my friend." A heavy silence fell over the room. The demon lords, each with their own agendas, were left to process his words. Guy, who had been quietly observing, muttered under his breath, "Interesting." Ramirez remained silent, though a faint smile tugged at her lips. She knew the truth, of course, but she didn't want to interfere. This was Rimuru's moment. Frey, one of Rimuru's fiancés, watched with a knowing expression. She had heard everything before, but seeing it unfold before the demon lords added a different layer of tension. Milam, though, seemed to still act as if she was under Clayman's control, her eyes narrowed in feigned confusion. Clayman, losing his composure entirely, yelled in frustration, "Lies! How can you expect me to believe that the Bloodthirst Storm Dragon is calm? This is absolutely a lie. Everyone can see that." Rimuru sighed, his expression shifting to one of mild annoyance. "You can believe whatever you want, but the truth is the truth. You can't change that," he said, his voice firm but unruffled. The room remained still, the weight of Rimuru's words settling over everyone. Here's an adapted and polished version of the scene with grammar correction, more details, and a clearer structure. Rimuru continued his speech, his voice steady but unwavering. "And about that so-called subordinate of yours, Myorn. She's still alive. You cursed her, using her for your little scams. But I rescued her. In fact, she's one of my fiancés now, just so you know. Clayman, sensing an opportunity to add yet another false accusation, smirked. Ah, so you put a demon inside Myorn's body, didn't you? Acting like you rescued her, when in reality, you killed her first. Irina, Rimuru's younger sister, sighed heavily. She turned to Rimuru with a knowing look. Big brother, don't bother with him. I'm sure he'll never accept his faults. Rimuru smiled softly at Irina. You're right, he replied, before turning his attention back to the room and continuing. And about Falmouth's army, they did, in fact, attack Tempest. That's not a lie, Rimuru said, his tone calm. Yes, I gathered about 70,000 human souls from that incident, but for me to awaken as a true demon lord, it's not nearly enough. A brief silence filled the room as the weight of Rimuru's words sank in. The few demon lords who had already awakened knew just how much was required for such a transformation. Finally, Guy, one of the most experienced demon lords, spoke up. How much do you need, Rimuru? He asked, his voice serious. Rimuru, without hesitation, turned to Informer, who was silently working behind the scenes. He quickly asked, Informer, how much do I need to awaken? Informer's voice echoed in his mind, about at least 100 million human souls. Rimuru blinked in surprise. That much? He muttered to himself, before turning back to Guy. 100 million human souls, Rimuru stated, his voice calm but heavy with the implications. Once again, the room fell into stunned silence. Even Guy, who had seen and heard many things, was taken aback by the sheer scale of the number. Irina and Rain, standing beside Rimuru, also reacted with surprise upon hearing the figure. Everyone in the room didn't expected this. 100 million human souls was far beyond what any of them had imagined. The tension in the room was palpable, silence stretching thin like a drawn bowstring. Then, breaking it like a thunderclap, Clayman yelled, his voice laced with fury and indignation. You're lying. You don't belong here, you pust. You're not worthy of standing among us. Clayman's words echoed through the chamber, but Rimuru didn't flinch. His gaze, calm and unwavering, rested on Clayman. A faint smile curled Rimuru's lips as he responded, his voice steady and confident. Not worthy. I'm more than worthy to be here. If anything, it's you who should question your place. Before Clayman could retort, Guy Crimson leaned forward in his seat, an amused smirk playing on his lips. Well, Rimuru, if you want to truly claim the title of Demon Lord, we could make it official. Rimuru met Guy's gaze, his expression unreadable. From the perspective of humans, I'm already a Demon Lord, he replied smoothly. Guy chuckled, his crimson eyes gleaming with interest. Then how about this? If you can defeat Clayman here and now, I'll recognize you as a Demon Lordone of us. The room stirred with murmurs, but before anyone could say more, a light voice rang out, cutting through the tension like a blade. That's easy, Irina declared, her tone casual yet brimming with confidence. She stepped forward, her eyes gleaming mischievously as she looked at Clayman. For my big brother, beating someone like Clayman is no problem at all. Her words drew a sharp glare from Clayman and a ripple of surprise among the demon lords. Rimuru glanced at Irina, a faint chuckle escaping his lips. Well, it seems my little sister has more confidence in me than some here, he said, his tone light but edged with steel. Clayman clenched his fists, his face contorting with rage. You arrogant. Enough, Guy interrupted, raising a hand to silence him. His gaze shifted to Rimuru, now sparkling with anticipation. So, Rimuru, what will it be? Will you prove yourself here and now? Before Rimuru could respond to Guy's proposition, Irina, his younger sister, stepped forward with an exuberant grin. That's too easy for my big brother. Irina declared confidently, her voice brimming with pride. Rimuru's amazing and super cool. There's no way someone like Clayman can beat him. Her words sent a ripple through the room, drawing amused smirks from some demon lords and annoyed glares from others. Clayman, however, looked absolutely furious. You dare mock me, girl. He bellowed, his face twisted in anger. Do you have any idea who I am? I am an awakened demon lord now, a true demon lord. Your brother is nothing more than an unawakened demon lord seed a low-level existence. Rain, standing behind Rimuru, took a small step forward, her icy smile sending a chill through the room. As if, she said with a light laugh, her voice cutting through Clayman's boasting like a blade. Her words left the room in stunned silence. The other demon lords exchanged confused glances, Clearly wondering why Rain, Guy Crimson's loyal subordinate and a primordial demon, was defending Rimuru rather than her master. Clayman frowned, his irritation mounting. Even in maids, are you seriously siding with that idiot? He snapped. Rain's smile only widened slightly, though she didn't offer any further explanation. Most of the demon lords remained oblivious to the truth that Rain was no longer just Guy's subordinate. She was Rimuru's loyal maid and, more significantly, one of his fiancés. Unknown to the gathered demon lords, Rain wasn't the only one in Rimuru's corner. Frey, seated calmly at her place, observed the situation silently. Her poised expression betrayed none of her emotions, but inwardly, she couldn't help but feel a twinge of satisfaction seeing Rimuru so composed under pressure. Like Rain, Frey was also one of Rimuru's fiancés, though this was a secret she guarded carefully from the others. Ramirez, perched awkwardly in her seat, was visibly torn between acting like a proper demon lord and letting her excitement show. She already knew the truth about Rimuru, having accompanied him to Walpergus. Meanwhile, Milam continued her act of pretending to be under Clayman's control, her expression carefully neutral. She had to maintain the facade for now, though she was itching to break free and deal with Clayman herself. Even Luminous Valentine, the true vampire demon lord hiding under the guise of Roy, watched the proceedings with narrowed eyes. Her attention lingered on Rimuru, though she made no effort to reveal her thoughts. Rimuru leaned back slightly, his expression unreadable as he watched the room's dynamics unfold. He could feel the layers of tension, the hidden allegiances, and the unspoken truths bubbling beneath the surface. Finally, he spoke, his calm tone silencing the room. Clayman, you seem awfully confident in your newfound strength. But strength isn't everything. Are you sure you understand what it truly means to be a demon lord? Clayman sneered. Don't lecture me. I'll prove my worth by destroying you right here. Before Rimuru could respond, Irina piped up again, her voice full of enthusiasm. Big brother, you've got this. Show him why you're the best. Guy Crimson, who had been watching the exchange with a smirk, chuckled. This is getting interesting. Rimuru, are you going to prove yourself, or should we settle this another way? Rimuru's lips curled into a faint smile as he leaned forward slightly. Oh, I'll prove myself, he said, his voice steady but filled with a quiet confidence. But Clayman, I think you're going to regret underestimating me. Clayman's face twisted with fury as he clenched his fists. What I'll destroy you. No, I'll do far worse than that. I'll annihilate not only you but your entire kingdom. I'll crush everything you've built into dust. Rimuru leaned back in his chair, chuckling lightly. You really don't know when to stop talking, do you? I already know everything about you, Clayman Footman, Tear, Laplace, and even the one who helped you awaken. The room fell deathly silent. Clayman froze, his eyes wide with shock. What? He stammered, panic beginning to creep into his voice. How could you possibly know that? Before Rimuru could answer, Irina chimed in, her voice bright and proud. Because my big brother knows everything. He's the best, after all. Clayman's face contorted in rage, and he turned his venomous glare to Irina. You insolent brat. He roared. After I kill Rimuru, you'll be next. The atmosphere turned icy, the temperature seemingly dropping as the tension escalated. Rimuru's expression darkened, but instead of responding to Clayman, he called out calmly, Irina. Irina immediately ran to her brother's side, her violet eyes wide with curiosity. Yes, big brother. Rimuru smiled at her and ruffled her hair affectionately. Then he turned his gaze to Guy Crimson. Change of plans. I won't be fighting Clayman after all. The demon lords stirred in confusion. Clayman blinked, his anger momentarily replaced by confusion. Guy raised an eyebrow, his crimson eyes gleaming with curiosity. Oh, and who will, then? Rimuru gestured to Irina. She will. Irina will fight Clayman. A murmur spread through the room as the demon lords exchanged puzzled glances. Guy scrutinized Irina carefully, his expression thoughtful. Huh. That's unexpected. But, are you sure? Her magical energy is leagues below Clayman's. Rimuru smiled faintly, his confidence unwavering. Trust me, it'll be fine. Irina's face lit up with excitement, and she practically bounced in place. Really, big brother. I can fight him. Yes, Rimuru said, his tone calm yet firm. But don't kill him. Just play with him, maybe teach him a lesson or two. Got it. Irina exclaimed, practically vibrating with enthusiasm. Clayman stared in disbelief before bursting into mocking laughter. You're seriously sending that little runt to fight me? Have you completely lost your mind, Rimuru? This is an insult. But before he could finish his tirade, Rimuru cut him off, his voice cold and sharp. You don't understand, Clayman. If I were to fight someone like you, it'd be no different than bullying the weak. And I don't have time to stoop to that level, it'd make me look like a total jerk. Clayman's laughter faltered, his expression twisting with rage once more. Weak, am I? He spun around to face Milam, his voice rising. Milam, show him what true power looks like. Destroy Rimuru. Milam, who had been sitting quietly up until now, stood up from her seat. Her expression was unreadable as she jumped down from her platform, landing gracefully between Rimuru and Clayman. The room grew silent, all eyes on Milam as she positioned herself in front of Rimuru, blocking the path to Clayman. Clayman grinned triumphantly. See, even Milam acknowledges my strength. You're finished, Rimuru. Rimuru, however, didn't react. He merely observed the situation, his calm gaze flickering to Milam as a faint smile played on his lips. Interesting, Rimuru murmured under his breath, already knowing how the next few moments would unfold. Rimuru, calm and composed, let his gaze drift toward Clayman. Tell me, Clayman, he said smoothly, do you really think Milam can stop me? Clayman sneered, his confidence unwavering. Milam is one of the strongest beings in the world. And you're just a low-level demon lord seed. Do you seriously think you stand a chance? His words dripped with mockery, and his smug grin widened. Rimuru chuckled softly. If that's what you believe, then so be it. Arena will fight you. He turned to his sister, who was practically glowing with excitement. And as for Milam, I'll take her on myself. Clayman burst into laughter, shaking his head. Ridiculous. You're digging your own grave. Ignoring Clayman, Rimuru turned his attention to Guy Crimson. His voice carried a hint of amusement. Let's make this more interesting, Guy. Remember that favor I mentioned before? Guy's crimson eyes sparkled with curiosity. Oh, I remember. What do you want, Rimuru? Rimuru glanced at Arena, giving her an encouraging nod. What do you think, Arena? What should I ask for? Arena tilted her head, her violet eyes lighting up as she pondered. After a moment, she clapped her hands together and grinned. How about a fight for the title of the strongest demon lord? And, the leader of this council. The room erupted in murmurs, disbelief etched on the faces of the demon lords. Dagruel broke the silence first, his deep voice rumbling with disbelief. Is she insane? Leon Cromwell leaned back in his seat, his golden eyes narrowing. You've just dug your brother's grave, little girl. Roy, the false demon lord, laughed mockingly. How amusing. A mere demon lord seed challenging the strongest demon lord. This will be entertaining. The other demon lords remained silent, their gazes shifting between Rimuru and Guy. Even Milam, who was still pretending to be under Clayman's control, seemed to falter for a moment, nearly breaking her act. However, she quickly composed herself, resuming her stoic expression. Clayman, meanwhile, laughed like a madman, his voice echoing through the hall. You can't even beat me, Rimuru, yet you dare challenge Guy Crimson. You're a fool. Rimuru didn't flinch. He turned back to Guy, his expression calm. Guy finally stood, his smirk deepening. You've got guts, I'll give you that, Rimuru. Fine, I'll agree to this, but on one condition. Rimuru raised an eyebrow. And what might that be? Guy's crimson eyes gleamed with mischief as he laid out the terms. If you manage to defeat Milam, and your sister defeats Clayman, then I'll grant you the title of the strongest demon lord. And after that, you'll face me. If you win, you'll be the leader of this council. The room fell into stunned silence. Even the ever-calm Leon seemed taken aback, and Dagruel's usually stoic expression wavered. Every demon lord in the room froze, struggling to process what they had just heard. Rimuru, however, remained composed. A faint smile tugged at his lips as he nodded. Agreed. Clayman broke the silence with a sharp laugh, his arrogance on full display. Ha! And what is this? He gestured mockingly toward Rimuru, his eyes lingering on the dragon horns and elegant attire. And blindfold. Who are you trying to impress with that ridiculous getup? A masquerade ball? Or is it a costume party? Clayman smirked, completely oblivious to Rimuru's true identity as a true dragon. Arena's eyes blazed with fury, her aura flaring momentarily. Brother, she said, her voice trembling with anger, can I take care of this loudmouth now? Let's fight first and deal with his nonsense later. Rimuru raised his hand, signaling her to wait. Patience, Arena. His voice was calm, yet there was an edge to it that silenced the room once more. He then turned to Guy Crimson, his eyes betraying a hint of amusement. Would you mind making some space for this? Guy chuckled, clearly entertained by the unfolding drama. Get it, get it. I'll handle it. With a casual snap of his fingers, the round table and surrounding furniture vanished, replaced by an expansive battlefield. The ground glimmered with ancient runes as the room expanded in size, the walls glowing faintly with Guy's Barira masterful work designed to withstand even the mightiest attacks. Rimuru and Arena strode confidently to the center of the newly created battlefield. Rain moved to follow, her worry evident, but Rimuru stopped her with a glance. There's no need, Rain. Stay back, sit tight, and enjoy the show. Rain hesitated for a moment before nodding reluctantly. All right, but don't go too far, she muttered, her voice filled with concern. Milam, still pretending to be under Clayman's control, approached the center alongside Clayman. Her expression was blank, though her eyes briefly flicked toward Rimuru in a silent message. Clayman, meanwhile, stood smugly at the forefront, his fox familiar growling lowly at his side. Behind him, shadows began to ripple, and two massive puppet-like creations emerged, their dark energy crackling ominously. Clayman spread his arms dramatically, a sinister grin spreading across his face. Behold, my greatest creations. He gestured toward the puppets and the fox. And with Milam by my side, you two are hopelessly outmatched. Overwhelmed in both power and numbers. What do you have to say now? Arena burst into laughter, her voice ringing out across the battlefield. Ha 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 ha. Look, brother. He brought toys for me to smash. Rimuru chuckled softly, nodding. It seems he did. Turning his gaze to Clayman, his smile faded into a look of cold indifference. Let's get started before I get bored. Clayman bristled at their dismissive tone. Arrogant fools. He snapped. All talk and no action. Let's see how long that confidence lasts. Rimuru's expression remained calm as he replied, let's see who's the big talker when this is over. As the tension in the room reached its peak, both sides prepared for battle. The barrier shimmered with energy, sealing them in for what promised to be a decisive confrontation.